Welcome everyone to today's webinar. I would like to introduce Ryan Weiner, co-founder and COO of MASSIVE. Ryan is going to talk to us today about liens after no-fault reform. If you have any questions during his presentation, please use the chat feature. Welcome, Ryan.
Thanks, Michelle. Let me just get my screen sharing set up properly. And we should be off, hopefully. So I set out on this to teach you all about liens after no-fault reform. And in doing so, it turned into that's too much. I can't do that in a short period of time. So I'm going to focus this on Medicare liens after no-fault reform. I can still take questions at the end on non-Medicare, but I think focusing on Medicare, which is more specialized and difficult anyway, more complex, is a good way to start this conversation. And we can do this again in the future with the non-Medicare, ERISA, FEBA, private plans, Medicaid, whatever. But for now, this is focused almost exclusively on Medicare. Also like to say happy birthday to Michigan. I saw earlier today it's Michigan's 185th birthday, so it's a good day for a presentation. And I will probably make bad jokes every 10 minutes or so, including random facts about Michigan. So that's what we've got. Again, if you have questions, use the chat feature, use the Q&A in Zoom as well. I will keep an eye on them and I will try to answer them all at the end. We should have plenty of time afterward as well. I think Michelle booked us with a lot. So liens after no-fault reform. First, it's good to set the baseline. And where were we and where are we going? Obviously, no-fault used to be unlimited, and now there are potentials for it to be limited. Our expectation is most plaintiffs involved in Michigan car accident cases probably do not have unlimited PIP moving forward. We haven't really gotten good data on that yet, but we think a majority will be some sort of limits. Again, setting the baseline. In the past, Medicare would claim a right to BI, to to UIM, but we could always convince them using MCL 500.3135 that it should close its quote unquote liability file. I'll explain the difference between Medicare no fault, Medicare liability as we go. Again, just good to know the baseline where we were, which is Medicare really didn't have a right and acknowledged it. Now, they probably have a right to all of your cases, all of your settlements. The best way to go through this process, the best way to get yourself in the right mindset of whether or not there will be a lien on your case is ask yourself, can this settlement include medicals? Not does it, but can it? If the answer is yes, likely Medicare has a right to it, whether it's BI, UIM, something I've never heard of, it doesn't matter. If the case can include medicals, then Medicare has a right. That's how we're going to consider it. This, of course, means that there is a burden shift back from only the PIP case to now all those other settlements that you could have. Even if the PIP amount is great enough, even if the limits are something above 50, maybe in the 250 or 500 range, and your case value is only, we'll call it 200,000. Medicare will now have a right to the third-party cases. So I created this helpful table, and this is something I've started to use in all my presentations of what do you expect and when can you expect Medicare to create a file. The first thing to point out is that this Medicare CRC no-fault file, that is the carrier's responsibility. And when I say file, I'm actually speaking improperly. Files is correct. Medicare's CRC no-fault can have multiple files, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that happening. Generally, we're going to see that when PIP pays voluntarily, or when Medicare makes a demand against PIP and PIP pays that semi-voluntarily. If they do that, the Medicare demand will be from the CRC no-fault file pre-settlement. But that doesn't mean we're done. It means that Medicare will open a new CRC no-fault file. It's okay for that to happen. You have to remember that. However, you're also probably not going to see those unless you seek them out. You can do that through Medicare's portal. Medicare's portal will always tell you, okay, there's a big red writing at the top. It says something like, there's another file, what's this date of injury? Expect those. And generally when you see those, it means don't search by case ID number in Medicare's portal, search by the date of injury. Frankly, I don't really think we ever search by case ID number unless we're really looking for a specific case. Date of injury helps you find all possible files that are open. So that's an example of Medicare should have multiple files open. And that is true in the past. It will be true in the future. It's just the way that Medicare treats PIP, no fault, MedPay, depends on what state you're in. Obviously, we're in Michigan, so we're calling it PIP. The reason why Medicare does this is because the carrier has assumed something called ongoing responsibility for medicals. It's a mouthful, ORM. And that's saying we're the ones to pay forever until we say otherwise. That's the ORM. Eventually, especially when there's limits, ORM will end. In the past, ORM would only end if you settled out your no-fault case with futures waived. Some attorneys do that all the time. Some refuse to do that ever. Doesn't matter. It's just how Medicare functions with the notion of ORM. On the flip side, once you get past the carrier files, these CRC files, there's another contractor called the BCRC, Benefit Coordination Recovery Contractor. The BCRC handles any case where there will be a settlement. So you can see in my table here, it considers the plaintiff the debtor. That means debtor to Medicare is the person who should be paying back. All these other scenarios will be something that you open through your reporting to Medicare. I have some caveats about that we'll get to, but you should only see one file for each of these settlements. If you settle your PIP, assuming there's only one PIP, which I think is really all we ever see, you will only ever see one BCRC no-fault file. Now you compare that to the CRC no-fault files, where there can be 1 to 11, doesn't matter. For your settlement, one file. That remains unchanged, and it will be that way forever. But the changes you're going to start seeing are when BCRC claims their liability settlements. They've always been claiming them, but in the past, we can make the argument saying, no, you're not entitled. By law, all medicals are coming from no fault, the PIP. We can't make that argument anymore. Again, even if the PIP is enough to cover, because your UIM, and BI cases could now include medicals, Medicare is entitled. All lien holders are going to claim they're entitled. I recommend you guys look back at this table. I think it's pretty helpful, but I'm going to move past it pretty quickly here. I think that's probably good to move on. Maybe a little caveat too, if any of you work in work comp, same kind of idea. The CRC will have work comp files that it opens, but again, multiples. BCRC, if they were ever to open a work comp file for you, it's because you've closed out, you've settled the work comp, and a lump sum payment is going to the plaintiff. I probably should have backed up, and so we will now. Defining the term debtor. Medicare's debtor, or Medicare's use of the term debtor, is just saying who's the responsible party. So when ORM exists, when the carrier says we are still supposed to be paying this, the debtor is the insurance carrier. When a settlement is made, the debtor automatically becomes the plaintiff, or really the plaintiff settlement fund. It's important to note that indemnification will not stop this process. And we have plenty of carriers who have said to plaintiff attorneys, we'll take care of the liens, don't worry. You should still worry. They don't fully understand that these files exist in multiples. They don't understand that they're going to have their own file and maybe you're going to have your own file. I just saw a question pop up. Normally I won't ask them on the go, answer them on the go, but will slides be made available to participants? I'm okay with that. I will talk to Michelle and she will get them to you. So Medicare will ignore your indemnification agreements, and Medicare also will not be taken care of by defense. You need to make sure that if defense says they'll take care of it, either you do it for them and say, here's the final demand, now pay it, or you explain to them the multiple file scenario. I want to say the best way to do that is to do it yourself. And I know that's not a great answer, but I think it is. We've had plenty of those scenarios where defense said they would take care of it and they didn't understand how these files work. In fact, I'm on a listserv for Medicare Secondary Payer Network, I think it's called. It's a mix of plaintiff and defense-oriented companies like mine. And a question came up today, and I was amazed at the lack of knowledge on the conditional payments process. So don't assume that defense is actually going to take care of it. Make sure that you take your table that's on the previous page, this one, and you say, do I have all the files I need to have taken care of by Medicare? The answer is probably going to be no, but you have this table to help you turn it into a yes. Because Medicare is ignoring your indemnification agreements, and again, this isn't changed. A lot of this isn't all that different, but because they're ignoring your indemnification agreements, the collections or garnishments will likely be taken care of before any indemnification can be enforced. So it's important to keep in mind, we're expecting collections process for Medicare to exist around 6 months after the final demand is issued. And you may not even know that a final demand has been issued if there's multiple files and defense is supposed to take care of the liens. Keep that in mind. And again, I say close out all the files yourself and then get defense to pay it if that's your deal. So we talked about how there's different files. Again, go back to the table, but it's important to know who CRC is, who BCRC is, and how they work. The CRC, Commercial Repayment Center, and that name should help you understand what they do. Commercial repayment, meaning from the carrier. So the CRC is only going to handle recovery from the insurance carriers. BCRC only handles it where the debtor is the plaintiff. CRC opens their files based on Section 111 defense reporting. And that reporting, some people think it's only at the end of the case. That's only part of it. Section 111 reporting has two pieces. The one that we all know about, hopefully, is defense will report all settlements to Medicare. The one that you may not consider, defense needs to report this ongoing responsibility for medicals to Medicare, so these CRC files can get opened. It's important to recognize that's going to happen. Once you settle, that's when BCRC can take responsibility for no fault, excuse me. Any liability file, so again, going back to BI, going to UIM, or non-auto accident cases. BCRC will open those files for you immediately. You guys make the call, you go on the portal, whatever happens, those will get opened. BCRC does give some trouble and oftentimes won't open a file, or will open and then automatically immediately close the no fault BCRC file. Just because they've closed it, it doesn't mean that there's no responsibility. It's not really fair, but Medicare does a bad job of acknowledging why they close files. So if they auto close a file and it's not because you provide settlement info to them, then they're considering their rights still exist. Be aware of that. It's probably something you can fight in a court, but to get to a court when it comes to Medicare, 7 years probably, you have to go through their entire administrative appeals process. Finally, BCRC, you can see it on the screen, obviously. They're only going to try to collect after a settlement occurs. They're only going to issue a final demand after a settlement occurs. It's important to be ready for that, but at the same time, it helps you breathe a little bit easier. They can't come after you or the plaintiff until that settlement is done. Maybe a little tidbit too, this is old, but still helpful. If you haven't received your settlement funds yet, and that 60-day clock is ticking for a Medicare lien, you can either get it paused or you can pay late and show that you didn't pay late in terms of receipt of check, you just paid late compared to Medicare lien. You can get interest waived that way. I would like to talk more about Section 111 reporting and what the defense does. I don't know how much time we have, so I will maybe try to get back to it at the end. Excuse me. I have 3 examples for you guys. 2 are motor vehicle accidents. 1 is a med-mal case. And I think the med-mal case will be helpful just to get a simpler picture. But let's start with old school unlimited PIP. Pre-settlement, the CRC will have a no-fault file open. As I've mentioned enough times already, that will close, it will open again, it will close, it will open again. It may not be the same case ID number either for Medicare, so be aware that there can be multiples. Post-settlement, you can get the no-fault file open with the BCRC. So that's when you've settled your PIP case and a lump sum is being paid to you and your plaintiff. You can get that open upon settlement. Pre-settlement, you can get something opened, but you can't actually get the demand for the BI, third party, UIM. All those are not collectible and not open. I'm sorry, they're not collectible until settlement. They are open pre-settlement. I've complicated that. I do apologize. Again, considering this is an old school example where there's unlimited PIP, this is where you can use the PIP Act and say to Medicare, hey, PIP handles all medicals. BI, UIM cannot and does not close your liability file. Shouldn't be a problem. We do that dozens of times per day. I'm sure it's starting to get smaller now that we're running out of the unlimited PIP cases, but Medicare will close those. Be ready to do that. Okay, medical malpractice. I know it's not the basis of this presentation, but I think it helps put some understanding of when Medicare might have wrong files open. So this scenario is designed to show you it's designed to show you when Medicare should have files open and when it shouldn't. So the first issue is if there are multiple defendants, maybe the hospital and a couple doctors, they are likely to report settlements separately. It depends on who their insurers are. It depends if they're the same insurers. Proper communication is needed both with defense and with Medicare. Ask defense, how are you reporting this? Say you settled for $100,000. Is $50,000 with Beaumont and $50,000 with Dr. Jones? Ask Beaumont, ask Dr. Jones, ask the attorneys, how is your team going to report this under Section 111? If they're reporting as $100,000, no differentiation, easy. If they're reporting as 250s, you should do that when you're talking to Medicare too. Literally list, we've settled for $100,000. Bullet point 1, Beaumont, $50,000. Dr. Jones, $50,000. This will help you pay for your file, help you pay for Medicare's file, just in case the defense reporting goes awry and somehow multiple files do get opened. You can say, we gave this info to you, you screwed up. Because if you don't break it down, Medicare may not be so understanding. The other big issue, the very, very big issue assessing with nursing home cases, bed sore cases, et cetera, is date of injury. In auto accidents, nice and easy. You got a police report, you know the day that the accident occurred. But in medical malpractice, nursing home, et cetera, there's disagreement. Some places say, oh, admission date, February 1st. This is our date of injury. But the person was healthy on February 1st. We don't know. Maybe the bed sores developed on February 5th. If you do a different date than the defense does, multiple files will exist. And it's really bad if defense date's earlier than your date. If your date's earlier than defense, Medicare will let it slide. They'll open a file, but they won't give you trouble with closing it. Make sure this is properly communicated in your settlement agreements even. I have advocated this for years and it doesn't really do anything, but I'm trying. Get that kind of information put in your settlement agreement. What is the date of injury reporting to Medicare? What are the ICD-10 codes being reported to Medicare? How is the settlement being reported to Medicare? That's that 100 or 50-50 breakdown. Be ready for those. So I did not mean to go forward, I apologize. So if you do have multiple DOIs for a medical malpractice case, maybe person fell on February 1st and then there was a botched surgery on February 5th. Again, there could be 2 files open. That could be proper, but talk to defense. See if they're going to report it as 2 separate settlements or 1 settlement. All right, back to auto accidents, because that's what we're here for. Now we're in the limited PIP scenario. So what is going to happen here? Nothing changes with the CRC file. Defense is still going to report ongoing responsibility for medicals to a certain point. So the CRC will open no-fault files. They will demand them. They will close them. They will open new ones. From your point of view, the plaintiff files, similar scenario. Medicare will open a no-fault file. They may not open it until settlement. Medicare will open BI, UM, et cetera. They will open those whenever you tell them to. The difference here, now Medicare can claim reimbursement on those files. That's because PIP is limited. And again, it doesn't matter if there's enough PIP to go around. Medicare wants its bite of the apple whenever you settle. You can imagine you settle your BI first, and then you settle your PIP for $3,000. Medicare is not going to be okay with that scenario. That's why they want their attempt on the BI files. They're worried about burden shifting in every sense of the word. And if you try to do that, where you settle more on BI, UM, and try to make your PIP settlement tiny, it's not going to work because they have a right to these BI files now. Okay, practice tips. I have gone pretty quickly, so I think I'll be able to answer questions. I know there's one sitting there right now, and then I can maybe go backwards and try to explain some other bits that I may have gone over too quickly. Number 1, to understand who can collect on, who can claim liens, ask yourself, can my case legally include medical bills? It's not, did it? It's not, will it? It's, am I allowed to do so? If yes, Medicare will claim it has a right to a lien. It's the same for any other lien holder. Your only arguments against liens in this kind of scenario are, I'm not allowed to collect. Sometimes those arguments don't even work. Medicare has a long history with wrongful death cases, and they ask the same question, is did you ever claim medical bills? If you claim medical bills in a wrongful death case, Medicare has case law saying they're allowed to collect. Practice tip number 2, open your Medicare files early. English is a strength for me sometimes. Open your Medicare files early. So you have that table. You should know what needs to be open. You should know what needs to get closed before you feel comfortable releasing all the funds to the plaintiff. So if you have the files open early, you can go on Medicare's portal. You can search by date of injury, not case ID number, by date of injury, and you can see, okay, I've got a file open for BI. I've got a file open for no fault. If it's multiple accident dates, now you can see that you have files open for those multiple accident dates. Again, I mixed it in there. Use Medicare's case ID number. Use Medicare's date of injury, but then also you can use the case ID number to say, am I looking at the right file? And that's another big question. Medicare needs to know which case you're trying to pay and which case you're trying to close. If you send settlement information, say we settled our case for $50,000 and Medicare has 2 files open, they're probably going to make an assumption, and you don't want that because they're only going to be right 50% of the time. So when you're reporting information to Medicare, use the case ID number. 15 digits. It's really easy to grab it from the portal. It's really easy to grab it from the top of all of Medicare's letters. And then you can say, we've settled this case. I mentioned searching Medicare's portal using date of injury. Again, there's that red warning saying that multiple files exist. It's helpful. Use it. Back to the settlement agreements. Some key points that I think you really need to include. Date of injury, this goes, sure, more toward med mal and nursing home cases, but you know what? Use it in the auto cases too. Better safe than sorry. Injury codes. So ICD-10 was approved and activated rather 4 years ago, 5 years ago. We've been using it long enough. ICD-10 has so many codes. It has code saying there was an auto accident. It has code saying the arm was broken, where the arm was broken, which arm. It's very specific. Make sure specific codes are used. Don't let defense say fractured arm. Make them say fractured left arm, fractured right arm. There are plenty of times where we see a plaintiff fracture their left arm, and then 2 months later, after the left arm is healed up, unrelated to the case, they fracture the right arm. You know, it happens more with different types of back injuries, but the same thing can exist there. Low back, mid back, upper back, neck. These are different parts of the body. They have different ICD codes. Be clear on what is getting reported, both from your end and from defense end, and make sure those are agreed to in the settlement. You want defense reporting narrowly because it'll help focus your liens in. Third point of the data points in your settlement agreements, make sure your settlement figures are exact. Again, break it down by defendant, by type. If you have that Dr. Jones and Beaumont example, keep it in mind. If you have a UM and a BI and a UIM case, we'll call it. It's possible it's the same defendant. It's possible they want to treat it all as one. Just be aware of how it's being reported. If it's different defendants, that's going to be different too. You're going to have 2 different reportings. Make sure those all get to Medicare. And just because Medicare's file is closed, it doesn't mean that the next settlement doesn't have to be reported to Medicare. That's a good one when you're dealing with BI and UIM. So if your BI case settles for 100 and your UIM case settles for 50, but the UIM isn't for 3 months, Medicare's file has been closed. Get it reopened, make sure you get a demand. Otherwise, Section 111 reporting will happen from the defendant and they will get a demand issued. You don't want to be surprised by that, so have it done in advance. Finalizing no fault. This is where we get into the details of Section 111, and it's a little complicated because it's a defense thing. They're the ones who get penalized for not reporting. Supposedly $1,000 per day per incident. We actually haven't heard of any penalties. We're looking for them because we hadn't reviewed this information in the last year or so, but it's been years since Section 111 reporting was activated, and there still weren't any penalties issued. Defense is scared of it, but there's still no penalties. Excuse me. So when you're finalizing no fault, make sure the defense has reported the ORM, the ongoing responsibility for medicals, is done. If they've done that, CRC is done. You're down to one contractor to deal with, that's the BCRC. So when you report your settlement to the BCRC, BCRC will take over all the claims and they will issue you a demand. There's possibility if your timing is, we'll call it good, that the claims don't get transferred from CRC to BCRC. That can still bite you. If you've agreed to indemnify the defense now on Medicare liens, your BCRC file may have $100 in liens. The CRC file will have $2,000, and the CRC may not be so likely to close their file. Be careful with that. You can get lucky, you can also get really unlucky. I recommend being safe and trying to make sure that everything gets transferred. We've seen 2 lawsuits so far where the claims didn't get transferred properly. I don't know the result. They weren't my cases, they weren't our cases, but we've heard of it. So after ORM is ended by defense, you report your settlements to BCRC, and you should get a final demand. Pay it, take care of it. Again, if you can't pay it right away because defense hasn't paid you, you can use that to your advantage to either stop interest or to get interest waived after the fact. Finally, I mentioned the BCRC and CRC transfer claims. So I guess we can go into that. What is right? What should you do? My two examples of where it bit some attorneys, it can happen. It also can happen that nothing occurs and that you get a $0 BCRC lien and somehow the $5,000 lien from CRC gets closed out. Very lucky. I don't like that risk. It exists though. I will do questions in 1 second. A quick note on non-Medicare. Some people think of a term called lien hunting. So they're saying, if I don't know about it, I shouldn't alert the insurance companies. I disagree with that. It's up to you, but to me, there's an ethical obligation to make sure there's no surprise liens. You should take care of them now while the money exists and while the plaintiff hasn't spent it and while you have control of it. So I think you should reach out to any potential lien holder. If they don't have rights, you can argue that later. If they do have rights, good thing you reached out. At the same time, the practical implication of that is only Medicare actually has a direct line to defense. Only Medicare has a law saying defense must report this information to us. So we know that no matter what, defense is reporting to Medicare and Medicare will find out. Other lien holders, they may not have a direct line. They may not even know who defense is. But if they do, they can reach out. They also have systems in place that are pretty savvy. I talked about ICD-10 codes talking about auto accidents. Some carriers see auto accident and will send a questionnaire to your plaintiff saying, please tell us what happened. They may condition benefits on it. They may not. If they do that, their algorithm may catch your client, and there may be a lien you don't know about. It's good to check it. I think I'm good on that topic. I apologize for moving forward too fast. Yeah. All right. I'm happy to talk questions now. Let's look into them. I have 3, I think, on this list. So first question asks, with no-fault reform, is Medicare now able to claim a lien or collect on conditional payments on third-party claims where the plaintiff does have unlimited PIP in place still? No, it's only when PIP is limited. If PIP is unlimited, think about the old way. Medicare didn't have a right on BI, UIM. Other lien holders may claim they do. ERISA plans, especially FEBA plans, which is federal employees, that's a different question. And that's a whole different presentation, a whole different series of research. But if we're still in the unlimited PIP scenario, Medicare shouldn't have a right to your BI, your liability type settlements. It's where you get into the limitations. It's just a question. If PIP is limited, now Medicare has a right to the BI. That's it. If that doesn't answer the question, follow up with me. I'm happy to answer. Next question is, we've got some numbers, so be ready here. If there's a $250,000 PIP policy and settlement is made for $150,000, how do you calculate what Medicare may be owed in the future on a third-party case, seeing as though there's still $100,000 left on PIP medical? You don't worry about what's left in PIP. Medicare may claim a lien on the BI case. That's the only question. So if Medicare does claim that lien on the BI case, it's giving you an opportunity now. You can turn around and say, hey, PIP, you have $100,000 left. So if PIP still has $100,000 left, you can say, this Medicare BI or liability lien should be paid by you guys. That may help you. Next question is, how does defense report end of ORM if a case with unlimited PIP is settled, but there's ongoing treatment? The ongoing treatment doesn't matter. All that matters is if defense is responsible anymore. If your future benefits have been waived, defense will report end of ORM. If your future benefits are still in place, defense cannot report end of ORM. That's the simplest answer I can give you. Again, ORM, ongoing responsibility for medicals. So think about it exactly as the words say. Do they still have that responsibility? If yes, they're not going to report the end. That is actually it for questions. I have one more thing I want to discuss on my notes. I missed it. Paying Medicare. It's okay to pay Medicare during the appeals process. It's actually generally a good thing unless you're certain your appeal is going to get the lien down to 0. So it is not an admission. Medicare will not say, oh, they paid us, they must think this lien is real. It's not how it works. You're just using it to pause or stop interest. If you are absolutely certain that your appeal will get Medicare's lien to 0, okay, you maybe don't have to pay. I understand that, but you must be absolutely certain. So in the case where you are only appealing $2,000 on $10,000 lien, you can either pay the $8,000 if you're certain you're going to get down to $8,000, or you can pay all $10,000 just in case you think you might be wrong. Safer. I like that move. And the good news is Medicare reimbursement is a lot faster than it used to be. We generally say 4 to 6 weeks. Recently, we had one that happened in 18 days. Do not assume that will happen. It happened to be in December. I'm thinking maybe it was some kind of end of year luck where Medicare was trying to clean up their 2021 numbers, but it's possible. Expect 4 to 6 weeks. At the same time, no interest is a lot better than 4 to 6 weeks. With that, I'm done. I will probably prepare a new presentation for the non-Medicares out there, which is a lot more complex, but I can wait here for more questions if you want me to. Oh, there's another one. Here we go. CMS will still send a letter saying they know we settled a liability claim even when there's unlimited no fault. We send them a letter giving them the no fault information. Is there something else we should send to CMS? Yes. I don't think the no fault information matters. I think what you should do is say you don't have a right to this, CMS. We've done that in the past by quoting, you guys are bigger no fault experts than me, MCL 500. I have the citation somewhere here. I'm sure you guys know it, but let's pull it up anyway. MCL 500.3135 parentheses 3. I'm certain you guys know that better than I do, but that's what we use. We say under this act, our case cannot and does not include medicals. Please remove your lien. Please close the file. Keep in mind, they will only close the file if the case is settled. I don't think it's a problem to give them settlement information and also tell them you don't have a right to it. As far as giving them no fault information, they don't care. They think that your client's the debtor here. So if it makes you comfortable and papers your file, I get it. And you can show it to the carrier later on too, saying, hey, we gave this to them. At the same time, I know some firms that turn around and instead of giving the no fault information to Medicare, they give the Medicare lien to no fault and say, you need to pay this. They can turn it into a lawsuit or they can go for a voluntary pay and wait and see. If you want the carrier, the PIP carrier, to pay the liability lien, it's good to have the final demand first. I suggest maybe trying to get it closed and see if you can get the BCRC file open instead. But I understand there's some ramifications in that when it comes to opening a new PIP case. It's your call, and it's not going to be seamless. It's going to vary by case. Looks like the last question. I'm happy to sit here and look for more. Good news is this is not CLE, and CLE is not required in Michigan. So if we end early, we end early.
Well, thank you so much, Ryan, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. I will send Ryan's slides to everybody who was on today's webinar, and we also recorded it. So if you would like a copy of the recording, please let me know, and we'd be happy to send that as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.